Hello, it's Mr. Curtis, and I'm going to take you through a quick little overview of the assessment that we're going to be working on, but helping you working on the poetry assessment. Hello. Now there are 4 papers in total for English language and English literature. We're going to have a look at the literature papers, and you can see that the power and conflict poetry is on paper 2, section B, and the overall paper is 60%, and actually this section itself is 20%. So it shows you how important it is when we get this right before we get to the final mock exams in year 11. Now this is the format of the paper. Now this isn't the assessment that you're going to have, but you're going to have one poem printed. You're also going to have a list of the other poems to help you with your memory, and you're going to have a question. And here you can see the question we've got is, compare how poets present the impact settings have on a person's emotions and thoughts in London, and one poem from the anthology. So you will have in your assessment the poem printed, and that's the main poem that you're going to work with, but you're going to have to go with one from memory. Now, some key points. Before we look at the assessment in great detail, I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of some of the key things. And this links into some of the problems that students have and where they go wrong. This really, in terms of your writing, 75% of your writing is going to be about the printed poem. And 25% really is going to be your memory poem. That's the poem that you're going to recall in your head as you're comparing. Now, generally, the advice I give to students is you work most of the time with a printed poem, the one that's in the assessment, and then you just make connections every so often to your memory poem. But that's the way to think about it. So you don't have to stress too much about how much you remember from the poem. And as you watch the other videos, you'll see that you don't actually have to remember that much. You just need to make sure that you know the poem and you can recall a few quotes and a few techniques the writer uses. You're looking for 3 detailed paragraphs. That's not small 5 or 4 sentence paragraphs. You're looking for long, detailed paragraphs. The more you write in a paragraph, the more you can expand on points, and that expanding on points is key. You're going to have 45 minutes for this activity, and generally as a rule what we say is 15 minutes planning and then 30 minutes writing. So that gives you an idea that you need to be writing a detailed paragraph every 10 minutes. Answering the question is key. It's not about remembering everything you can about the poem, and that's where students make a mistake. The examiner does not have a list of key things they're looking for from your response. What they want to see is that you've answered the question. So you need to get out of the habit of chucking everything you know about the poem and thinking about answering the question. Students have gone down in terms of marks and grades because what they haven't done is answer the question. What they've tried to do is show off, and actually your explanation is the thing that's going to help you show off your ideas. Use terminology. It's really, really important when talking about poetry. So, you talk about adjective, you talk about similes, metaphors, repetition. Those are sort of things that you need to be talking about when writing and talking about what the writer does. You must plan your answer. And as I said before, 15 minutes is how much you really should be spending your time, because it takes that long to get to those good ideas. You cannot come up with those good ideas straight away, and that's the problem that students have. They need to write straight away, and that's not the best way to do it. All right. Often, the first person to finish is often the person that's rushed it and not thought about it properly. Start with your ideas first, and then link them to language. And often what happens with poetry is people can remember repetition, or they can remember a simile, but what they forget about is the ideas. And actually, that's how you're going to answer the question, by talking about ideas. This isn't driven by language. So your spotting things is not the driving force behind the writing, it's the ideas about the poem. What do you think the poem is saying? And then linking that into how is it written. A lot of the students, when they compare the poems together, they try and compare the way that the writers use language. And really we're not interested in that. We want to see what you know about what the writer's done, but we want to compare ideas, not the language, because the writers will use different techniques. So there's no point looking at one poem and go, that poet has used a simile and that one hasn't. We're looking for ideas. You have to compare ideas in the poem, but you don't have to compare techniques. So I'm kind of repeating what I've said before, but I think it's really, really important. You're not looking to go, this person uses alliteration, this poet doesn't. Say a lot about a little. Alright, it isn't a case of rushing all your points down. Try and squeeze as much as you can from an idea and from a quote before you move on to the next thing. And remember, this isn't like other subjects where you've got a list of things that you've got to mention. The examiner wants to see a really good explanation. They don't have a checklist of all these things they want you to mention about the poem. They want you to have a clever idea, link it into the text, and then explain it. That's what they're looking for. And with that final point, is explanation is key. It's not spotting hundreds of things about the poem. It's saying something clever and explaining that clever point in detail. That's what's going to get you the higher marks, not the hundreds of things that you've spotted or you can remember from a poem. So just have a bit of a think before the next video. Have a think about which poem that you would compare for that question, London 2. And you can also use some of the cluster 1 poems as well to help you, get those ideas. Because sometimes, and the reason why we've done this way, is we've taught them in clusters so that you could possibly link in the clusters across assessments. So there's nothing wrong with you writing about exposure if you think that shows how setting has an impact on people's emotions and thoughts. There's nothing to stop you, and in some ways that's quite a stretching thing to do. Right, have a look out for more videos. We will be making more videos as we go along to help you. And obviously, pause the video, make notes, have a bit of a think about the ideas that are in there, and if you've got any questions or anything that you're not sure about, then message either myself or Miss Pearce on Show Me Homework and we'll answer your questions.